In this video, we introduce supply and demand. Okay, so these are concepts from economics, but they're very mathematical, and so we want to give you an idea of the mathematics behind supply and demand. So first of all, what's demand? Well, demand is the quantity of goods and services wanted by consumers, and supply is the quantity of goods and services that businesses provide or supply. Now, what's important here is that both of these are functions of P. So we say at a price P, because if the price is lower, then the consumers will want more, and if the price is higher, they'll say, oh, I'm not so interested, and they'll buy less. Same thing with supply, uh, the quantity of goods and services that businesses provide at a price P. So the suppliers are willing to provide more if the price is higher. If they can get a higher price, they'll provide more things. So we can think of these both as functions of P. So we have, in other words, Q, the quantity that's demanded, is a function of P, D of P and S of P. So S is for supply and D is for demand. Okay, so let's look at these in a graphical setting. So here I have a set of axes. I have the P, which is going to represent the price, and then Q is going to represent the quantity. And I want to first consider, say, the supply function. What does the supply function look like? Well, as the price increases, manufacturers or people who provide services are going to want to provide more because they can make more money, right? So if the price of gold becomes higher, then they're going to want to create or mine more gold or produce more oil. So a supply curve looks like this. The graph of the supply function usually looks something like this. Okay, so this would be the graph of, say, S of P. As the price goes up, the quantity supplied by the manufacturers also goes up. So that would be a supply curve. Now for a demand curve, it works in the opposite fashion. At a low price, consumers are willing to buy lots of stuff. If the price of caviar is very low, they'll buy lots of caviar, maybe. But if the price is very high, they buy less. So as the price goes up, consumers will buy less. So their demand curve will go down. So here's the demand curve. Okay, now what's important for us is, well, what is going to be the long-term price in such a situation? Well, everybody wants to, the consumers want low prices and the suppliers want high prices, and there's some tension between the two. And in fact, the price that they'll settle on in the long term, if you have a large market, will correspond to that point. So the price that you'll settle on is this price. This price is called the equilibrium price. It corresponds to the point of intersection between the supply curve and the demand curve. There's also the equilibrium quantity. That's along the q-axis. It's the quantity that's produced in the long term in a large market with, you know, perfect information about everything. So this is the equilibrium quantity. And so that's the equilibrium points. It's the price and the quantity which the market, this is what Adam Smith predicted and works pretty well in most situations. And so how does this work? Well, you see, the idea is that if you're at a price that, say, was less than the equilibrium price, then the consumers would want to have lots of stuff provided to them. However, the suppliers would only produce this much. That's what the supply curve says, is that you would only be able to produce this much. So seeing that they're in control, the suppliers would start raising their prices because they would make more money, they would generate more revenue, so they would raise their prices uh, up until this point, at which point they wouldn't want to go any further because then they would be creating more than actually was being demanded. And this would be stuff that they'd have to put into storage because it's not demanded anymore. So they would actually stop increasing their prices to here. Conversely, if we had prices here, suppliers might um, create this much, but then they would be over producing. The demand would only be this much and the rest would go to waste. So this is exactly where you get the perfect balance between supply and demand. This is the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity.